Welcome to the Mental Health Multiverse.
We're your hosts,
HB
and LB.
We'll be breaking down some of our favorite movies and TV shows as they relate to mental health, self-healing, and overall wellness, while also breaking stigmas, shedding light on misinterpretations, and helping you understand yourself a little better.
If you're also on a healing journey and enjoy pop culture, stick around. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of MHM. This week, we are talking about Ariel from The Little Mermaid, and we are joined by a special guest, Kari Lu Cowell, to talk about one of her favorite Disney princesses.
Yes. I'm so excited to have Kari on. So I'm Heather, joined with my co-host LB, and Kari, with no pronouns, just Kari, is a multi-passionate, creative yoga mentor and instructor, witch, reluctant medium, and love coach. Kari identifies as non-binary, queer, neurodivergent, and a transracial, transnational adoptee from Taiwan. And Kari and I met on the internet. So we connected. And you're another one of my friends who I've met during lockdown on the internet. Like, right? We met.
I think that's when we met.
During the COVID. And we got to hang out in LA 2 summers ago, which was really fun because that's where Kari is located. And Kari has also done a little bit of love and dating coaching with me. And has helped me out in that world. So exciting, and so excited to have you on here to talk about Ariel.
Yay, I'm excited to be here. I just watched The Little Mermaid, both the original animated, and then I was like, I have time. So I started watching the live one, which I have thoughts about. I have feelings
The
about
live
that.
one? Which live one?
Yeah, it was, I don't know when it came out. It just popped up when I typed in Little Mermaid into Disney Plus, but it was like Queen Latifah was Ursula, and I don't know how to pronounce her name, but Auli,
the voice of Moana.
Moana was Ariel. Like
that was one of those like Broadway stages, like it was like a stage production on TV. I haven't seen that actually.
Me neither.
It's on Disney Plus. They did like a mashup of like all of the songs were like musical numbers on stage, but the like dialogue and the narrative was like they switched between the original cartoon and on stage. I have thoughts and feelings about it.
That's interesting.
Okay. No, I was gonna say I've never seen the Broadway production because there is a stage production of The Little Mermaid, which I have never seen. I have never touched it, so I don't know anything about it.
No, I was just surprised because I thought there is a live action coming out, and I was like, oh, did you get like access to
early access? It's coming so soon. Actually, by the time this episode is released, it will probably be like just like a couple weeks.
I will say, when I was in Downtown Disney over the weekend, they had so much merch for it, and I'm so excited about it. I'm so excited. The merch is so cute. I'm just yay. I can't wait. Anyway.
Yeah.
No, I was super excited. I thought it was like a streaming release. I didn't realize it was like a movie. So like whenever I go, like I have AMC A-list and like I'll go see a bunch of movies and that would be previewed. And I'm like, man, they're really like pushing the streaming release in the movie theater. It's like it did not occur to me that this was gonna be a like legit movie.
That's so funny.
And I am so glad it is. I still cry. I'm sure I'll cry when I watch it, but I still cry when. Have you guys seen the TikTok videos of the little black girls watching the trailer and being like, she looks like me? Like I cry every time I see one of those videos.
No, but now I need to go like scour TikTok.
Okay, I'm gonna put a link to one in the show notes of this. I will send it to you, Kari. Like it makes me cry every time. I'll have to find them. I'm just curious how my feelings will be different once I see the live action movie, because I have thoughts and feelings about the cartoon that I don't love. And I feel very optimistic. Yeah, I feel very optimistic about the live action movie. I do. But speaking of, Kari, can you give us like an abridged synopsis of The Little Mermaid?
I can, because I literally just watched it like 4 hours ago. So it is a adaptation of Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid with a much, much nicer ending. So we start off with like this big ocean scene and Prince Eric on his ship and great songs. It's so dramatic and I love it. And we really don't even get introduced to Ariel until about like the first like 10 minutes in. Like we see all these sailors and we have this big song, and then it's like do 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 do, and like we go under the sea and we see Ariel. And really, like the plot is she's so curious about the human world and she falls in love with Prince Eric. And she's 16, which is said in the movie that she's 16. And her daddy is all about like humans are the worst people ever, the worst creatures ever, and they're just going to kill everybody. Stop being so enthralled with the humans. And then we get like the rebellious teenage Ariel who's like, I love humans. Like, I'm going to do whatever I want. And so she goes to see she goes to see daddy's sister Ursula, who says, I will change you into a human so you can go get the dude. And all you have to do is give me your voice. And that's what happens. And Ariel gives Ursula her voice. And she has 3 days to make Prince Eric fall in love with her. And she has no voice, and she has all these wonderful creatures to like help her get him to fall in love with her. And then Ursula finds out that like they're so close to like getting that kiss, and she's like, fuck that. And she turns herself into a human with Ariel's voice and goes to see Eric. And Eric's like, you're the one I love. And I think she actually enchants him too, because if you like look at the cartoon eyes, he's like, they're all like hypnotized. And then at the very last minute, Ariel like right as the sun's going down on the third day, Ariel leaps up onto the boat when Eric's marrying fake Ursula. And the shell that has Ariel's voice in it breaks, and Ariel gets her voice back, and they're like, Eric, Ariel, and they're about to kiss, but they have too much conversation, and the sun goes down, and Ursula takes over everything. And Ariel turns back into a mermaid and gets thrown into the sea. And then Triton, her daddy, is like, you can't have my daughter. And Ursula, being the sea witch that she is like, well, if you want your daughter to live, you have to give me you. And that's what he does, because he loves his daughter. And Ursula gets all of the powers of the sea and turns into this gigantic octopus monster. And is terrifying. I don't even know what she's doing. She's just being evil.
Yeah, she just like makes a whirlpool and is like, this is the most evil thing I do.
Exactly. I was, watching it as an adult, I'm like, and through an analytical lens, I'm like, there's not a whole lot going on here, but it is very evil.
Yes.
And then Eric, being the great seaman that he is, like jumps into this boat that's in the whirlpool and like drives the boat into her heart, and Ursula dies. And Daddy Triton is like, oh, I love my daughter, and I can tell like she loves this man, so I'm turning her into a human. And they get married, and then they sail off into the sunset together, happily ever after. And that is basically the plot of The Little Mermaid.
Oh my god. Can we talk about how they got married and she's only 16?
Yeah. Oh my god, I didn't even think about that.
It's so weird. So weird.
Help. No, I have
question mark.
So many questions, like looking at it through an adult analytical lens. Like instead of just like sitting back and enjoying the ride, I was like, first of all, how is King Triton related to Ursula? I mean, maybe it's just because they both live in the sea. Like, I don't know, are all sea creatures related somehow? But like, she's an octopus and he's a fish.
Wait,
so like,
I didn't know they were siblings. I didn't. So my brain actually wrote down that like she used to be part of the palace and all this stuff. Like she used to help rule the ocean, whatever. But like they don't explain what happened. So
they
am very
don't.
confused.
But I think I didn't know that they were related in that way either. But I think the lore is that when she was banished, I think Triton made her like the quote unquote monster that she is. I think.
Oh, is that what it is?
I think so. Because I think she was a mermaid at some point, if I remember correctly. But I don't actually know. Don't quote me on that.
I think there's like one line that says like, my brother whatever kicked me out of the kingdom. But for sure in the Broadway version, it's like a whole thing.
Okay. I mean, so in the novel, Ursula is King Triton's sister, who was betrayed by him as a child for choosing a tentacled form instead of a mermaid's tail. So she chose it.
She got to choose.
Yeah. In it just says in the novel. I'm just using Google here. So
That's fine.
I feel like that kind of makes her more badass though. Like that she's just like, yeah, I'm gonna be an octopus. I've got 8 arms. What?
I'm
like,
choosing, yeah.
It's interesting though, because then in the sequel, I don't know if any of you have watched the sequel. I love it. It's essentially the same movie, just the other way around, because her daughter wants to be a mermaid so badly, but is a human. And she meets Ursula's sister, Morgana, who is another sea witch. And they talk about like their mother, who was also another octopus, I guess. So now I just have more questions.
Well, the novel in reference in this quote that I just said is from a 2016 young adult novel called Poor Unfortunate Soul, A Tale of a Sea Witch. And it is it's like a Disney licensed novel.
Oh, it's like the retelling. Yeah. Like those series of books where it's like, what if Ariel didn't get a happy ending or whatever.
So it's like, yeah, I don't know how much like canon that holds, but that's what popped up when I Googled is Ursula Triton's sibling. So
interesting. Well, because Triton is like a mythological thing, so I wonder what the mythology is around that. Anyway, tangent.
Yeah, we're not gonna get into that. We're just gonna go with the magic of Disney and just be like, okay, she was banished and she wanted revenge. The end.
Disney magic. So the movie came out in November of 1989. HB was a little baby, literally like what, a month old?
Yeah, I was a month old.
I'm a month old baby. Kari, when did you watch the movie for the first time, or what are some of your personal experiences with the movie?
I don't remember so I was 7 when this movie came out, and I don't remember if we saw it in theaters. Like my family was pretty poor, so like we didn't always go to the movies. It was like a special occasion, but I do remember having like the clamshell VHS when it first came out. So right, like I'm assuming I saw it in the theaters once, and then I like watched the VHS tape like forever and ever always. And I remember so like when I was growing up, we had like a pool. This was like pre like economy crashing, like mid 90s or early 90s or whenever that happened. I was a kid, I don't know. but like we actually had like a house that had like an in-ground pool, and so like me and my brother and my mom would always like be playing in the pool, and we'd play the Little Mermaid like over and over and over again. And I was always Ariel, and my mom was Ursula, and my brother was whatever he was, whatever he decided to be.
That's
so
cute.
I have a lot of good memories about this movie.
I love that.
That's so sweet. Oh, what about you, HB?
I loved this movie too. I don't remember the first time I saw it. I don't remember much about loving it, but it's definitely one of those movies like upon rewatch, because like haven't seen it in my adult life. So this rewatch through the lens for this podcast was my first time rewatching it as an adult, and there was so much that I forgot. However, there were things that I remembered, like being absolutely terrified of Ursula's lair and her like souls, because they're terrifying. And I just remember like that being very scary for me. And if you remember when I was talking about Snow White and the terrifying things of Snow White that were terrifying but also excited me, I think I felt the same way about Ursula, which is like I was scared, but I was also really like enthralled by it. I was like, this is so great and terrifying. Which I think I'm still like that. That's why I like scary movies, I think. But anyway, that's I used to play mermaids a lot with my friends, you know, that the like, you want to play mermaids with me? If your mom says that it's okay, like, do you want to play mermaids with me? Like, yeah. We did that at the YMCA, the local YMCA with my friends, but I don't think it was ever associated necessarily with like the Little Mermaid. And I'm trying to think, because as y'all know, if you've listened to previous episodes, you know that there's a lot of discussion of me dressing up as my favorite Disney princesses when I was younger. I never did Ariel. I might be wearing like a little seashell moment right now, but like I'm wondering if it's because of her costume, and not because I didn't love her. You know what I
Not
mean?
quite age appropriate. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know I had like little t-shirts of the Little Mermaid and things like that. So, but also like my mom just loved me dressing up and whatever. So I don't know what is mine and what was like my mom being like, wear the Little Mermaid. But long story short is like I don't remember much about loving this movie. I just know that it was just in the rotation. It was a staple. The music, I remember loving the music, and I think that's that's big. Like I was really, really big into Disney sing-alongs as a kid. So it's like I think the music from this movie also held a really special place in my heart. But yeah, I just that was just like a curious thought that popped up to me about the dressing up as her, because I dressed up as almost everyone else. But not Ariel.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, what about you?
Very similarly, I don't remember the first time I watched the movie because I would have not been born.
Yeah.
When it came out. But I know that Ariel was actually my favorite princess for a very, 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 very long time. If you will listen to our Mulan episode, you know that she is my current favorite Disney princess. But for the first few years of my life, it was Ariel. I wanted to be Ariel, I think, because one, she was just so pretty, and the bangs, like I think everyone wanted her beautiful mermaid hair. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And I was a swimmer growing up, so like duh. I remember I went to Disneyland when I was in kindergarten, and like the princess meetups or whatever, and I like ran to Ariel, and I had an orca on my sweatshirt, and she pointed at it and she was like, oh, like I love orcas and blah blah blah, and I said something along the lines of like killer whale, and she was like, ooh, no, we don't say that, we say orca. And that like cemented into my brain, and I never say killer whale anymore, and I'm always like orca, 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 orca. I can't disappoint Ariel.
That's adorable.
It was really sweet. And I had like a plush Ariel doll I used to carry around. It was like my favorite thing. I carried around when I was a kid, not like anyway. But then I think I got older and I was just like introduced to more dynamic and dimensional princesses like Mulan, and then that kind of shifted. So I think when I was a kid, I loved Ariel. I loved the movie. I think I related to her in a lot of ways that I didn't expect. And I didn't understand why as a kid, but now having rewatched it as an adult, I'm like, oh, this all makes sense now. And those things mainly being like the overprotective father, and the moment when he like destroys her cavern of all the things that she holds dear. I know.
My heart.
Oh, it was horrible. I was thinking about that. And I think it's interesting how we forget that sometimes having overly overprotective parents can create very secretive children, and it also makes sense that she has a cavern full of her own stuff because she has to share everything with 6 other siblings. Like, so I think she was just trying really hard to have her own space, her own things. And it's very unfortunate that her father destroys it because he's trying to like teach her a lesson or whatever, but you can see that it pains him. And I think now we are in a place in our society where we're realizing that that is not the way to go to teach children lessons, is not to destroy their things, or I don't know, like this is just not an effective way to teach lessons. So I related to her a lot in that way of having just like an overprotective parent that never really let her do anything, and then having to be like secretive about going out with friends or having fun or whatever. Like I remember my parents for some reason wouldn't let me have study groups. Like they wouldn't let me go over to friends' houses to like study or do things. And now that I'm older, I realize I needed, what is it called? It's like an ADHD thing where you need like the doubling in order to feel productive or whatever. And that's what I needed as a kid, because I would like hop on Skype and Zoom, or not Zoom, we didn't have Zoom, Uvu, and all of these like online video chat things, and we wouldn't say anything. We would just like do our homework together. But my parents would never let me go out. Anyway, so all of that to say, like I had to create very quote unquote secretive or sneaky ways in order to do the things that I wanted or needed to do. I know that a big critique of the movie is that she's 16 and she doesn't know what love is. But here's the thing. How many of us at 16 had very big feelings about someone, something, specifically someone, and we thought that like we would have those intensive feelings for someone forever, you know. All of that to say, I can relate to her in that way too. I can relate to her in the like wanting to experience more than beyond the life that she has, the little bubble that she's been kept in, and just wanting to like experience life. So those are the things I really like about her and things I relate to. She's funny, she's pretty, she can sing very nicely. And I wish I had her voice.
Wait, so I want to go back to something you said about ADHD.
Oh yeah.
When I was taking notes for the movie, I was listening to some of the ways that other people described her, and it made me think like, does Ariel have ADHD? She's described as careless, reckless, and forgetful. And it made me think like, and the way she like forgot to go to her debut with the family, like as this her like first concert singing. Yeah, like it felt, that to me felt like, oh, she's got ADHD. But nobody wrote this down. Nobody reminded her. She doesn't have like a, you know,
doesn't have
it's
a
like
planner.
Sebastian should have been on her and been like, you like, so in a way, I just think that like for me, that was sort of my first thought when I was listening to how other people in the movie, I think it's like, I can't remember who uses the words careless, reckless, and forgetful, but I think it's like her dad and Sebastian just like kind of combined talking about her. And I'm like, yeah, well, it's because she has ADHD and you're not doing anything to help her. Like, she doesn't know it. She's like undiagnosed. You got to help her. You got to help her.
Yes, exactly.
I feel like that's so insightful. I wouldn't have ever thought about that, but I think that might also be like why I relate so hard. So very similarly to LB, like overprotective parent, not really allowed, like there was a specific way that I had to be and specific rules that I had to follow. And like I was super rebellious and super curious, and I just wanted to know everything. And I feel like that's really what sticks out about Ariel to me, is that like she's very curious about like what's this human thing, and like has this treasure trove because she doesn't really understand, and she gets horrible advice from Scuttle about what these things actually are.
It's a snarf flat.
I wrote down that she's almost like an ambassador for humankind because her dad is so like, I don't want to say it was like, maybe it's like speciesism, right? Because they're mer people. But he's so anti-human. And I also wrote down intergenerational trauma because I'm like, what the fuck happened to you? Wait, can I swear on this podcast?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yes, but I'm like, what happened to you that you hate humans so much? Like,
so I'll answer that question. The mother is killed by humans. It's in her prequel origin story. Have y'all not watched all of the Little Mermaid movies?
No.
LB, when are you going to learn that I watch only the original and the original only, unless we're talking about Lion King 1.5? That is it. I watch no series. I watch no sequels. I watch only
oh man,
what was released when it was released.
Y'all are missing out. I'm just saying, they're cute. You get to see baby Ariel. She's adorable. I know.
Okay. I'll watch it.
Cute.
I'll watch it.
That does sound cute.
It's cute. It's very cute. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Kari. Continue.
No, you're good. I'm like, I think that was it. I just feel like she's so kind and like curious and rebellious and headstrong because she's just like, yeah, I'm not going to think about this. I'm going to sign the scroll where I turn into a human for 3 days and hopefully I get this guy to kiss me. If that isn't like 16-year-old behavior, right? Like,
no,
yes.
Truly. Yeah. Go ahead, HB.
So that kind of ties in with a little bit of community feedback that we got. I put a note or a question in my Instagram story and asked, what is one thing that you would like us to discuss on the podcast? And a couple of people mentioned that she changes herself for a man. So would you agree with that? Or how do you feel about that, like community feedback as something we should talk about?
I have mixed feelings about that because yes, one, there is a subliminal message here that you have to change yourself in order to find love, right? But also like, how would that have worked if she stayed a mermaid? Just from like a plot perspective, like, I don't know. How would they have communicate, you know what I mean? So that's just like my whole thing about, yes, it's unfortunate that she changes herself, and I don't love that that's a message that has been perceived ever since the movie came out, but also like what else could have been done, I guess, is my kind of follow-up question to that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what I have to say about it, well, first of all, and this is me just fully, you know, objectifying Eric, is like she fell in love with him at first sight. I do not blame her. He is a very attractive man.
I thought he was the first prince with like black hair, and then I looked it up and it's not true, but he is like the first prince that I remember with black hair. So like the only one that matters.
Yep.
He is an attractive prince, I will say. But I think the difference is, I think this is like an interesting conversation to have. Like, we don't have to wrap it up here. It can be a continuing conversation, is that she loved humans and was open to the human world. So it is not as though she changed herself and didn't want to. You know what I mean? It's not a change that she made simply to have Eric. I think it is a change. Well, it was a necessary change to be with him, of course. But I think it's also a willing change, like a change she was able to make willingly, because she saw the good in humans and she wanted to be in the, you know,
part of their world.
The land. Yeah, she wanted to be part of their world. She wanted to be on land.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of her songs are singing about how she wishes she could be. So and that was even before she met Eric, right? Am I wrong?
Yes.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Before, like, right. So yeah, I'm like, when did that song? I think that song's like almost immediately, right? So so she was wishing to be part of their world before she met him. So she got her wish in a way, and also happened to find love also. So that's like kind of the way that I look at it. I don't necessarily see it as though she changed herself for him. And I think a lot of the change too was like, it was like a necessary and also like natural change. It didn't feel like she was doing something she didn't want to be doing, or like conforming in a way that she was changing who she was. Yeah, fundamentally she was changing who she was physically, like she got legs, but like she wasn't changing who she was fundamentally as a person, which when people say like change for a man, I see that as more like fundamentally who you are as a person, rather
like
than
changing
like
your interests, hobbies, beliefs, core values to fit in with this person or be loved and accepted. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it is unfortunate that love seems to be like the main motivator behind her decision, but I do think, and I hope they kind of go into this more in the live action when it comes out. I can't wait for it. I do hope that they give her a little bit more agency and empowerment, and it's less about like, oh, I'm gonna become a human so that I can explore this possibility of finding love with the human, and more so about, I'm curious about the human world, and what better way to experience it than to become a human myself. And I would love for that to be the message, you know, rather than like change yourself for a man. But I agree with you, HB. I don't necessarily think that it's not as black and white as she changed herself for a man. It's very layered and a little bit more complex than that. Yes, unfortunately that is a motivator, but I do think too her curiosity and enthrallment with the human world is maybe a bigger, and she just saw this as an opportunity to explore both, you know?
Yeah. And I also think that Eric never asked anything of her, which is another big difference too, is like, you know, he wasn't like, I will only be with you if you have legs, you know, like that wasn't like, but it wasn't even like a discussion that was had, but it didn't seem like that he would have, you know, like I think he would have happily like continued to have a relationship with her in the ocean, and that would have been an interesting thing to explore too, of like, I'm in love with this mermaid, but she's a mermaid, you know?
Well, if you look at like the very end of the movie when she turns back into a mermaid, and he's like rowing out to like go save her from this whirlpool, he tells Grimm, he's like, I don't care, I'm never gonna lose her again, right? So I'm just
Yeah.
like, he's gonna figure this out one way or the other.
Yeah.
I feel like Eric was just like, no, I love her, and it doesn't matter like what she looks like or what species she is, I'm just gonna be with her. And I almost feel like, because I also have mixed feelings about it, like I can see where people are coming from for sure, but and I do feel like there's a lot of like subliminal messaging around like how you're supposed to be if you're like a woman, right? Like in the human world. But I feel like a lot of it just like comes from Ursula more than like Ariel changing into a human, right? Because Ursula's, I mean, using that to manipulate her to sign the scroll, but like like she says, like, you don't need your voice, men don't want that, like you just have to be pretty.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's a good point. And I think that's very telling of the time that this movie came out too, really highlighting that gender norm, I guess you could say, that women are supposed to be seen, not heard, all that kind of thing. And it's the quiet, demure women that are attractive.
The men up there don't like a lot of blabber.
Yeah.
They think a girl who gossips is a bore. Yeah, it's like it's all in Ursula's song. Although, Kari, I'm curious, as like a love coach, if you were able to watch this through the lens of that, and how you feel about the relationship through the lens of a person who coaches people on love.
Ooh.
I also have feelings, very strong feelings about that, because, and it's not that this can't happen. I feel like it's very rare, but like it really is more like, especially given that Ariel's 16, like probably more lust, like we talked about earlier, than because Prince Eric's hot, that it is like love, because what does he know about her? Like, what do they know about each other? She knows he's a sailor.
Yeah, and oh my god,
a human,
the way,
right? Like
the way, like when her dad finds her treasure trove and like she has the statue. Also, this was very relatable for me, like having the statue of him in her bedroom. Like I had pictures of Rupert Grint all around my bedroom, so I am all about that. Like I have a crush on someone, I'm gonna display it to the world. Hilarious. But like when her dad is like questioning it and about to destroy it or whatever, and she's like, "But Daddy, I love him." I was like, "Bitch, you saw him for 2 seconds."
right.
Him, and she says to her dad, like, "You know nothing about him," and I'm like, "Neither do you."
Exactly.
You
And
are
like,
just attracted to him. Yeah.
yeah, and just both of them being so like enamored with each other. I'm like, this bitch like sang a song to you when you were like half dead. So like, what do you know? You don't know anything. You're lusting after her because she has a beautiful voice, which like totally fair, right? But like, I don't know
she
if that's
also
love.
saved your life. Yeah, she also saved your life. So maybe we should focus on that. Like,
Right.
she's strong.
I was thinking about that when I was doing my adult rewatch today. I was like, damn, like she has to have like a lot of upper body strength, because she's just pulling herself up those ropes to the ship, and like she doesn't have legs to help her. She has a tail, and that tail has to be heavy, right? Like it's a whole like
The whole
human sized tail, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. No. And
yeah.
very similarly to Rapunzel, I think they're both very physically strong, but their animation does not make them look like it.
no,
Yeah.
no, not at all. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had questions about that too, just in terms, and I know like it was like, the late 80s, but like she fits through that little like porthole, and like I've never been like on a ship, like that type of a ship, but I'm like, I'm assuming that mermaids are human sized, like maybe they're not, but like I'm assuming they are, and I'm like, I don't think a human could fit through the porthole. So how is she fitting through the porthole?
Oh, if we want to start talking about body image, I do think that this movie is subconsciously damaging in a lot of ways. Just because of the way she is animated. I mean, come on. But it's what's interesting though is that it's like she does have all of these other like really great qualities. Like she is strong and she is curious and she is optimistic and she is, she's got a lot of like incredibly great qualities. But I think in the body image aspect of it is like she is drawn in such a way and it's not just her, it's how mermaids are depicted in media in general. And if you really want to talk about it, and I've seen lots of, you know, studies on this, I've seen artists talk about it, I've seen scientists talk about it, but like if mermaids really existed, they would look more like not whales, manatees than humans.
Mm-hmm.
They would be shaped a little more like manatees because they need a lot of blubber to stay warm and like, you know, swim around the ocean in the cold depths. So what I think is fascinating about the animation of the Little Mermaid is that you've got all of these like thin white, you know, like dainty looking creatures, and then the one creature who is depicted as like the larger body is the evil one, is the bad one. And I just think that that in itself is really damaging, even though, and I know Kari, you probably feel this way too, even though I think Ursula is a really empowering character in some ways, just in like her confidence and the way she carries herself, and the fact that she's like, you know, she's just a really empowered badass sea witch. The way that she is depicted though is evil. And so I think there is a lot of subliminal messaging about like everyone else in this movie is thin and white for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
This one character who is other is the fat, you know, and also based on a drag queen, which can add to the problematic nature of it.
Oh, I did not know that.
Which, yeah, if you guys didn't know, yeah, Ursula is designed. Ursula's design is based on the drag performer named Divine, which I can put a link to the show notes to talk about that too. But yeah, so it's like, it's just it to me in that way it's just a little bit problematic, because it's like we've got this like othered character who is in a larger body, being the evil one, which we know Disney does. They tend to do that with their people of color and people of larger bodies and, and all of that.
I just think it's unfortunate that it had to be so heavy-handed, you know, like they were like, look, this is the quote unquote bad person, this is the villain, because they look nothing like the
rest of everyone else,
the protagonist. Yeah, exactly, like this is your antagonist, they're gonna look different. And
however, to play devil's advocate with myself, upon rewatch I did notice that Prince Eric's maid, I think his maid who like washes his stuff and all of that, is also a woman of a larger body, and she's very kind and caring. So Ursula is not the only, you know, fat character in this movie, but you know, the other character was rather, like, for lack of a better word, forgettable, because I forgot about her. So, you know,
there was also at least one fat background mermaid.
Oh, great. I didn't notice that.
Which is like, it's so odd, because like one of the things that I thought was like Ariel, so I guess like the 6 other daughters, I'm like, why are they like, they're all the same, like they're all the same size with different hair color, like why do we not have body diversity? I mean, obviously we know why, but like, you know, I'm like, genes are similar, but they're not the same. So I thought that was interesting. I also have questions about how Triton has like 7 daughters with no mother or wife. I'm like, I know that like LB said that she died, but like, I mean,
and it's interesting too, because the mom looks just like an older version of Ariel with like the red hair, and they look exactly the same. But anyway, you guys should watch the prequel. It answers a lot of questions. Anyway, what you said too about, you know, her looking exactly the same as her 6 siblings. I don't know if I know HB hasn't, but Kari, I don't know if you've watched Avatar: The Last Airbender.
I love Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh my god, yay. Okay, cool. So we can talk about this. So I'm so excited. So the character Ty Lee, she has a very similar background or upbringing to Ariel, in that she has, I don't remember how many siblings, but she has a line where she says like, you know, I have such and such. It's in the beach episode, and they're all sitting around the fire, and she's talking about how she looks like all of her siblings, and so that's why she went off and did the like she went off and joined the circus and like try to be different and try to be unique because she wanted to stand out. But it also contributes to why she's very flirtatious and why she's a little bit of a people pleaser, is because she's trying to find that love, validation, and acceptance that she couldn't find from either her parents or from her siblings. And she just wanted to feel special. And I can see that a lot with Ariel. When you mentioned, like, you know, we talked about how she has 6 other siblings, so it makes sense that she wants her own space and wants to do her own thing, and why she might be seen as a little bit like quirky or different. And I think it's because she's trying to distance herself from her other siblings. But I think that's also why she kind of veers into like, I don't know if we ever see it outrightly, but I know, at least in my experience, like in trying to, one, having overprotective parents led me to be like very much of a people pleaser. And then also to like wanting to feel special and loved and cared about, I would chameleon myself and change myself depending on who I was with or who I wanted to receive love from. And so I don't know why your comment made me think of that, but yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I get the chameleon aspect. It's interesting because like having the overprotective parent, I went like way the other way, super rebellious, but it's still like the people pleasing came in very subtle ways.
Yeah. I think and those are really like my only notes on, I guess, a healing journey. If we want to kind of get into journeys, like I don't really have any notes other than that. I think Ariel might need to work on some identity stuff and authenticity work. But a lot of my notes were actually about Triton and his parenting, because you can see that he's very conflicted about the way he is trying to teach her lessons, and he doesn't love it. It doesn't fit his core values. And again, it's probably just like trauma that he experienced in losing his wife, and so he's trying to keep everybody safe by like super overcorrecting, being super overprotective. But I think we've seen that like overprotective parenting can lead to like a lot of detrimental things, like loss of risk aversion. And HB, what you were saying about her, about them commenting on her being careless, reckless, forgetful, like when you have an overprotective parent that doesn't allow a kid to take risk and learn from their mistakes, they have a tendency to like not, what am I trying to say, they might have a tendency to do more reckless and careless things because they haven't had the opportunity to learn that the thing they might be doing is not safe. And maybe we do kind of see that in the opening when the whole shark thing or whatever, and her going up to the surface, even though it's probably not a good idea. And I know in my experience, like having overprotective parents contributed to my lack of a sense of identity, which fueled like anxiety, stress, depression in my teenage and adult years, and like an overall low sense of confidence because I wasn't able to make choices and learn from mistakes. I didn't trust myself to make good choices, even because everything was decided for me. So as I got older, I couldn't ever trust my intuition. I didn't know what was the right way or the wrong way. But then also having, in addition to overprotective parents, I had like very distant parents. So like I could never ask them questions. They gave me no guidance, no feedback. So I really felt like very lost. Like, I don't know what to do. You never told me how to do this thing, but you're also not giving me any feedback. Like, I don't know. So I think that also contributed to like my external validation and people pleasing, because I would like have to rely on those external cues, even though it led into like a not so great thing. But I also learned then that my survival kind of relied upon making other people happy, like my parents, because they called the shots. So I grew up thinking that, okay, I have no agency, I have no choice. I have to see what other people want from me, and that's how I survive, and that's how I live my life. I don't know if we actually ever see that from Ariel now that I'm saying it out loud, but it would be interesting. Anyway, all that to say, I think we have come to a place in society, hopefully, where we're seeing that kind of parenting doesn't always work. And that parenting that allows for the child to express themselves, learn from their mistakes, and be authentic and self-aware can be more supportive in the long-term development, and that a childhood ruled by fear is not the way to go. Anyway, thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
No, I totally agree. I had a lot of notes on King Triton's parenting, but I feel like it was very like of the times.
Totally.
There was a part of me that was because like I grew up with abuse and like emotional, physical abuse in my household, and I was like, man, this seems kind of abusive, but it's not because it's like, you know, abuse is like consistency over time, like consistent behavior over time. But I'm like, no, but this is definitely like late 80s, early 90s parenting where you have that like tough love, like I'm gonna punish you to like make sure that you're on the right path type of parenting.
Totally.
Another thing that popped to mind on this adult rewatch was like, you know, this movie would have been over in like 15 minutes if Triton was like, cool, you love humans, like I'm gonna turn you into a human and you figure it out. And then like, you know, whatever happened happened. Right.
Truly. Yeah. Yeah.
Or
I
maybe
think
it wouldn't have been over in 15 minutes and we would have gotten to see her journey of being like, oh shit, being a human is hard. Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
because
being
she
a
does
human is
say
hard.
in her
yes.
yeah, she does say in her song, like, oh, up there they don't reprimand their daughters. And it's like, oh yes, they do.
Yeah.
Oh yes, they do.
Oh, but do they? Especially being the eldest daughter. Anyway.
Grass isn't always greener. Sebastian was right. Okay, sorry.
The human world is quite a mess. Quite a mess.
Sorry, seaweed. The seaweed isn't always greener. Sorry.
Yes, yes. And we have so many humans right now who want to be mermaids. So, which I'm for. I'm here for it.
I'm
Like,
for it.
Well, I have a question for Carrie too.
Okay.
So Carrie identifies as a witch, which I think is very cool. And I just want to know, like how do you feel about Ursula? Like, do you I identify with her? Feels like the wrong thing to say, but that's what's coming to my mind. Like,
no,
I'm
I
sure you
totally
like.
identify.
All right, talk to me about Ursula, please.
I love Ursula so much. And I feel like it's so interesting because you know, HB and I were both actors, and it's like I always, always, always wanted to be the ingenue. And I finally got into this place in my life because that's not my type. Like I would never be the ingenue for multiple different reasons, but really it's not my type. And I finally feel like I've gotten to a place in my adult life where I like have settled into and like really owned like this part of me because I would get cast as Ursula. And like that's kind of the role. It's like the royalty or like, you know, the evil, like kind of bitchy characters that I get cast as. And I'm like, yeah, but Ursula is so interesting. And like she is a witch, which I love. And I like that it's like different. Like she actually has power versus like Triton, who seems like his power comes from the trident. And like outside of that, like if he didn't like, you know, he gets his trident taken away and he has no more power. But I'm like, but if you were like a witch or a warlock, like maybe you could have fought Ursula, you know, with like even the scroll, like when she's like, this is a legal binding contract, you can't do anything about it. But Ursula's in there like making potions in her cauldron and putting spells on people and turning them into humans, and she does that like of her own accord. And for me, like witchcraft is like a very empowering thing. It's not like I'm gonna put a spell on you to like hex you or like make you fall in love with me or whatever. It's really just like a way to like bring power back into your own being. And I feel like that's kind of what Ursula does for herself and for other people. She just also happens to be evil, so she makes these like very manipulative clauses to get what she wants. That's the part that I don't resonate with.
Yeah.
I really like what you said about witchcraft being empowering, because I do think there is a lot of stigma around that, you know, like, ooh, it's too woo woo, or ooh, you just like pretty rocks and crystals. Like I don't necessarily agree with all of that. And I love what you said, because it's sometimes hard to explain, like it's hard to explain that kind of stuff to people who just see it as, I don't know, child's play kind of in a way, like make believe.
Yeah. And make believe is powerful though. Like children get so much courage from make believe. So if we get to make believe as adults and it comes in the form of like crystals or herbs or whatever, why not? Right.
Exactly. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna ask, because another thing that I blocked out of this movie was Ursula's death. Another dark Disney death that I somehow don't remember.
Yeah.
Like she was stabbed through the heart with a ship, with the mast of a ship. That's
Right.
wild. This is a children's movie, you know? And I get that she's evil, but my gosh, I don't think she deserved that kind of death. I don't know. How do you
Yeah.
guys feel?
No, I agree. I'm tired of, and I think we've moved past this point in our movies now, is I'm tired of like the antagonist just dying and not really learning a lesson. Or they learn the lesson and then immediately die, kind of like in Shang-Chi. I love that movie, but I dislike that the dad's like, oh yeah, my son, my child, I have mistreated you. I'm so sorry. And then dies. But yeah, it's dark. It's so funny having rewatched a lot of these Disney movies now for the purpose of this podcast, and then seeing how dark they are. I'm like, yay, Disney! It's for children. This is so cute and fun. And then I'm like, no,
I had the same
no.
feeling, HB, about Ursula's lair when I was a kid. Like, it was like, I'm very intrigued, but I'm also terrified. Like, I was also like, I wonder what it's like to be one of those like seaweed people. Like, what do you do? Right? Like, what does that feel like?
How long have they
And
been
like,
there?
yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I just don't know. I saw it. I just rewatched it today, and like the Ursula's death, I was like, was it even in the heart? It kind of looked like it was like underneath the like around the breastbone. So I'm like,
Mm.
maybe she could have survived. She's an octopus. I don't know anything about octopus anatomy, like, so like maybe she could have survived. But I feel like what came up just now is that like there's a big I guess lesson or like narrative around like what resentment can do to people,
Mm.
because like I feel like a lot of her like behavior and like why she's evil is because Triton kicked her out of the kingdom and like never really gave her, I mean maybe he did, we don't really know, but like,
Mhm.
or maybe they talk about this in like the prequel or the sequel, right? But we don't really know like if there were any opportunities for them to like repair or like see if she's changed or like if they've had conversations. It's just and I mean like knowing Triton from like what we know of him in the movie, he was probably just like, you're banished, and that was it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's a good point.
That's a really good point. Yeah. It's true. It's very similar to Scar in a way, you know?
mhm.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
One of my favorite things about Disney villains is that for the most part, like 99% of the time, they always have a reason for why they feel the way that they feel. Like they are justified, whether or not their actions, like how they care, like how they move through why they feel the way they feel, of course, is what makes them the villain. But like that's one of the most intriguing things about villains to me is the justification behind why they behave the way that they do, because they truly believe that they deserve what they're seeking, you know?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I know Ursula was trying to kill Ariel like at the end, because she was trying to like shoot her with the trident. But I'm also like, but what, when you succeed, are you just going to be gigantic monster forever? I don't think so. Like you wanted to rule the kingdom or at least like get rid of Triton. So what's
Yeah.
the next step, right? Like where do you go
Yeah.
from here?
The ending was very weird. And I'm just sort of like, okay, I don't really know what's happening here, but I know I'm supposed to be scared, I think.
Yeah. I think maybe another message too, in addition to resentment, now that we're talking about it, is she wouldn't have been stabbed if she didn't create this whirlpool and that ship wasn't floating around, like it was kind of her own volition that this thing happened to her.
Yeah.
So I think,
Yeah.
again, in addition to resentment, I don't know if it's necessarily karma, but like sometimes when actions are fueled by hate and resentment, there are a lot of blind spots and they can come to bite you in the butt, or in this case, stab you in the gut or wherever the heck she got stabbed and
Yeah. Yeah.
kill you. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
So this was like the beginning of the Disney Renaissance, right? Because before that, you just had like Snow White and Cinderella and
Sleeping Beauty.
Sleeping
Yeah.
Beauty. Yeah. And like, I feel like the Disney heroines have like grown. I mean, like Ariel was like, so, I mean, like, I say so far removed for the time, right? But like, I mean, if looking back now with all of the different heroines that we have, it's not really, but like, she was so different from like the first three big princesses. And I feel like the Disney heroines have just gotten way more independent and like
Yeah.
modern since then. And I'm like here for it. But I remember like, Little Mermaid, Lion King, Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast were like the big 4 movies of that time, because I don't think we really got anything good again until Mulan.
Yeah.
And also one of my favorite princesses.
Yeah, I do think that's another reason why so many people liked Ariel, is just because she was so different than what the princesses that they had seen before. You know, she had a lot more personality, a lot more, I don't know, I was gonna say like a lot more plot, like she does a lot more things.
I don't think she has more personality than Cinderella. I'm gonna say it.
Oh, hot take from HB here.
Hot take. Yeah.
And, you know, but she did have more like rebellion, I think, is the thing. And like she was more headstrong. She wasn't just like, you know, waiting for somebody.
Yeah. And we haven't talked about Aurora yet. So it's been a while since I've seen that, but I'm curious how I will feel about that.
I just feel like Snow White, Cinderella, Aurora were all just like caricatures of women in that time period, just very like, yes, and polite and demure and ha ha ha. Like, I mean, I love Cinderella. We, you know, in the episode we talked about how we loved her kind of sense of humor and how sassy she could be, very like passive aggressively sassy. But I think, I don't know, Ariel just has a little bit more spunk, like you were saying, Kari, a little bit more rebellion, a little bit more spunk, a little but I think it's also the age difference. She's 16, Cinderella's 19, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, is Cinderella 19? I don't think I knew
she
that.
Is.
Yeah.
She's like the oldest princess or something.
That's wild.
Kari, do you have any favorite quotes or themes, scenes, characters from the movie?
I love it all, honestly. Like, okay, so I was thinking about this before we hopped on to record, and like I actually did. So I pole dance, and I actually did a Little Mermaid Ariel pole dance.
Nice.
It was like pre-lockdown, so I can send y'all that link. But it was one of my first like professional yoga outfits when I first started teaching. It was like these turquoise leggings and this purple sports bra with some ruching in the middle. So if you imagine hard enough, it could look like shells. And I was just like, yeah, this is like my Little Mermaid outfit. So like, I mean, always Ariel. I think Ariel will always have my heart. I was surprised because I don't think I've watched this movie. I maybe watched it like once as an adult, but like a long, long time ago, like early 20s, right? But I remembered every single word. And honestly, I love most of the characters. Like the eels, Flotsam and Jetsam are so great because they're so just like kind of smarmy and evil. And like Ursula is just a badass bitch. Ariel, just for being what she was at the time, I think honestly, I just have like so many good memories tied to that character. And I mean, I don't like Scuttle. He's fine, but like,
he's so annoying.
Gosh, so annoying. I love like when during Kiss the Girl and he like pops in the middle of the song and he's just like Rah! And like the flamingos are like, what the fuck, like we need to get this seagull out of here.
Shut up, we got this up. Yeah.
Leave,
yeah, my only like favorite moment with him was like when he's looking at Ariel and he's like, she has just transformed into a human and he's like landed on her legs and is like, something's different about you, and she's like bouncing her leg and
my finger
he's like
on it.
I can't quite put my foot on it is what he says, because he's literally on it. She's like bouncing her leg and then Sebastian's like, she's got legs, you idiot.
You know what, I love
Sebastian.
Like I love Sebastian.
I will say though, maybe a positive note about Scuttle is his confidence. He gets everything wrong, but he's still confident about it. And I think it just reminds me of that quote that's like, you're doubting yourself and there's someone out there doing it wrong with the confidence you should have.
Scuttle is the example of doing it wrong. Whenever you have imposter syndrome, just think about Scuttle.
There we go.
I thought biggest Scuttle takeaway is the mediocre white man. That's it.
Yes.
I do have to say though, Scuttle redeemed himself at the very, very end of the movie when he's like, "Oh my God, Vanessa's the sea witch," and he like calls on all his bird friends that he never had throughout the whole entire movie to attack her.
We meet him like on a rock in the middle of nowhere. When did he make all of these friends?
Don't seagulls hang out together? Like
that's what Nemo says anyway.
Right? Yeah. But he also, and when he says that, he's like, "Am I ever wrong when it's important?" Like,
this is true.
Have I ever been wrong? And you're like, "Yes, you've always been wrong."
Yes,
always.
Literally, you've never shown us a reason to trust you, but yes, okay.
I think that's why I love Sebastian so much, because he's just like the grumpy old man that lives in my heart.
I forgot that Sebastian, so like, again, details of the movie I had forgotten. I first of all forgot about how or I didn't realize until adulthood how funny he is. But like, I didn't know that he was reluctantly following Ariel at first. Like, I thought Sebastian was like a voluntary like sidekick, Disney sidekick of Ariel. But I had completely forgotten that it's like by order of Triton, he has to follow Ariel around, and he's just like so upset about it. He's reluctant about it, much like you are reluctant to be a medium. He was reluctant to follow Ariel, but he's so good at it. He's such a good little grumpy old. He's really good at protecting her.
So I think it's cute. I watched like the first like 4 minutes of the sequel with her daughter, and like he's back in that role of like being the reluctant follower of the teenager, which is hilarious.
But can we talk about Flounder and how sweet and cute he is?
Yeah.
The sweetest little baby.
The sweetest
little movie. The New Life movie.
Wait, what?
Have you seen pictures?
No.
Yeah, he looks like a real fish. I mean,
he looks like a real flounder.
So, because it's live, it's live action, quote unquote, so he's gonna look like a real fish.
I mean, I just always thought that like his name was Flounder, but he wasn't actually a flounder.
I wish they would have also interpreted that that way for the live movie that's coming out.
Oh no.
Yeah, and like Sebastian is actually a crab. So
I did see that. I did see that.
Yeah.
That
I was not as upset by that one, because I know people have been upset about both Flounder and Sebastian. I'm kind of okay with Sebastian looking like a crab, because crabs are still like cute, like in their like natural form. But like flounders are just weird fish.
I mean, yeah. Okay. Anyway, no favorite quotes from either of you?
I'm really bad at quotes.
I have a favorite quote. I mean, this quote is by Ariel, and I think it's just like a testament to her character, but it's when she says, "I don't see how a world that makes such wonderful things could be bad." And I think it speaks to a little bit of her naivete and pure heart.
Yeah.
But it's also just like a really sweet thought. It's like the innocence of a child before they are corrupted by a sea witch, which is exactly
corrupted by the world.
Does. Yeah, exactly. So
no, that's pretty deep. That's a really deep quote. I think, humans have created a lot of great things, and they've also created and done a lot of horrible things. And again, I think that just speaks to the nuance and reality of our world. But I wish we could have more good things.
I do. I do wish.
Do you have a favorite quote, LB? I don't remember words like that, like quotes. So like I cannot have a favorite quote because I just don't remember things like that.
That's a good question. I actually didn't write any down. I think my favorite scene though is at the end when Triton transforms her into a human out of love. I wish we could have seen more of a conversation around that, and that like maybe she asked or was given a choice to become a human rather than him just doing it, so she had a little bit more choice and agency and autonomy over that. But I do love that he does it out of love for her and finally has come to this place of understanding, that yes, she is 16 and yes, she should be protected and stuff, but also that like she has to make these choices and learn these things on her own. And it looks like by the sequel everything has worked out for her in that regard. So that's when he does that, he has a quote too that he says how much I'm going to miss her, and that like really
that hit me in the heartstrings, because it's like Triton has such a journey.
He has such a
throughout
journey
this
for
movie.
sure. Yeah.
And it's really like that's the moment when he sort of lets her go. And it's really fascinating to see that his journey was really about like control and punishment and lessons, and he's the one who like ended up letting her go and in the end.
So I think his journey is pretty sweet. That moment is sweet. Again, I wish they would have had a conversation about it rather than him.
I agree with you, because that makes me think about, the community feedback we got for Snow White, which was, the non-consensual kiss at the end. And I'm like, this almost peeves me more than the non-consensual kiss in Snow White.
Yeah.
Because of course he's like doing it out of love for her and she wants it, but like she had like, give me a conversation, give me something,
Right, because now that she has had the opportunity to be a human, does she actually genuinely want to stay human, or could there have been like a both and situation, like an H2O thing where whenever she touches the water,
Eric into a merman.
They could have turned Eric into a merman and he would have been
that would have solved all the problems. He changed herself for her. He got like, come on, that would have fixed everything. He would have been a really hot merman.
He would have been a really hot merman.
But it's so funny because like I wrote this down too, that Eric looks like a lot of the mermen we see in the background of
That's
the thing
true.
Anyway. So she's like, oh my God, he's so beautiful. I'm like, you've seen 16 of them today. I don't understand. I mean, I understand, but I don't understand. Anyway. I think that's my favorite scene, my favorite character. I don't know. I again, I like them all. I think everyone is a great character in this. I think Flounder, just because he's so sweet and is such a good friend, despite also forgetting about the concert. But I love how and I don't know how he did this, but however he got Eric's statue into her little cavern, because
I have questions about that. He's a fish.
I have questions.
I think there's one little thing I want to put a note on before we wrap up that is, again, it's one of these situations where it's like, I've heard about the more problematic nature of this, but I'm not comfortable discussing it as an educated, like that I've not personally done all the research and I'm not educated on it, but I think it's important to mention, because we do have this podcast to sort of discuss these things, is that that there are a lot of people who really hate this movie and don't allow their children to watch it for a myriad of reasons. One of them being change yourself to impress a man. But another one that I think is important to bring up, there's a little bit of racial stereotyping in the film when it comes to like the portrayal of Sebastian. And one of the things that is brought up in an article that I will link in the show notes is that, so he's got a Jamaican accent. He is played by a Black man. His name is Samuel E. Wright is his name. And he basically there's like some advocating for staying under the sea because you don't have to have a job under the sea, which is like portraying dark-skinned culture as lazy and that kind of thing. But then the other stereotype that comes forth is like a lot of the fish who are voiced by Black actors, or the ones that are mentioned as like the Duke of Seoul, are drawn with fuller lips and more like stereotypical sort of imagery. So I just think that's like an important thing to bring up, but again, I'm not like well educated on the discussion topics. I just wanted to mention it.
And it makes sense for the time because it was less aware. We were less aware, just like as a culture. I do have one like fun fact. I don't actually know if it's true, but like I remember when I was growing up, like when I was a teenager, people said, you know how like Disney likes to put in their little like Easter eggs and stuff like that. They said that the castle, I don't know which castle, on the cover of the VHS actually looks like a penis.
Yes,
so
I've heard that too.
Okay, does it? Like I haven't never looked, but
they've changed. I think they've changed the they've changed it on like more modern things, but that would be a fun thing to have our audience like be like, do you have the original VHS like case of Little Mermaid? Like, can we
I
can
have
we
it.
see it?
I have it at my parents'. I'll see if I can dig it out. But yeah, that's what I've heard. And speaking of penises, the
The boner
animation,
scene.
the boner.
Wait,
And-
what? Wait, did
Okay,
I miss
so-
something?
Yes. Well, not they took it
Apparently-
out of in editing, but apparently, like, yeah, the original edit of it, the priest has a boner.
the wedding scene when he's walking down the aisle and he gets to the whatever, the animators or someone pointed out that that's supposed to be his knee. However, if you can probably go on YouTube and find it does not look like it, and it's pretty hilarious.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
So
don't
there
know why,
are
yeah,
versions of the Little Mermaid where it looks like the priest has a boner. Yeah.
Speaking of fun facts, some other fun facts. Again, I don't know if this is true, but someone pointed out that perhaps the shipwreck that Ariel finds is Anna and Elsa's parents' boat, trying to connect those two
Oh.
movies because the ships look very similar. I think it was disproven, but I don't know. I just remember that was like kind of fun and interesting, and I'd love for that to be like a connection because everything is connected.
It'd be wild.
Yeah. But
I think all ships just look the same also.
well, especially for that like time, because I think they're in around the same time period, with castles and wooden ships and all that fun stuff.
And princesses and
Yeah, exactly.
I
Anyway,
did see that, like, the little, like, the woman on the ship, like the ship, what is it? The ship head or whatever it's called. The mast. It
the
looks like
figurehead, yeah.
Ariel. Yeah, the figurehead looks like Ariel and has like the big bow and like everything in that like opening scene.
didn't notice that. That's cute.
she does
I
look
do-
like a mermaid. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do love her outfit with the bow when she's a human. That's cute. Anyway, so to kind of end on, I guess, like not a more positive note, I think everything we've said has been pretty positive. For me, my biggest takeaways from Ariel, from like a mental health or healing journey / recovery perspective, is taking chances, maybe not changing yourself and signing your soul away to a sea witch, but I think taking chances and learning from mistakes and just like allowing yourself to experience things and being brave and adventurous, and especially if you did grow up in a very overprotective environment where you weren't allowed to, and it's caused a lot of like, I don't know, confidence and esteem issues. I think the only way to really move forward from that is giving yourself chances and new experiences to discover who you are. I also do like that it's not a huge message, but another takeaway I got is, the, like you were saying, Kari, the Triton is very like, humans are bad, humans are the worst, and he has this like generalized idea of humans, and she gets to kind of make her own opinion and view of them, and I think that's kind of important too. Kari, is there anywhere that the listeners can find you, follow you online or social media?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. It's at Kari Lu Coaching, Karilu Coaching. I have a blog too, but it's linked on my Instagram. So just come find me on Instagram and you can find all my other links there.
Kari, thank you so much for your time and energy today. It was so amazing to meet you, to talk to you, and get your perspective and insights from the movie and from Ariel. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you for coming.
All right. Bye, everybody. See you next time.
See you next time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Mental Health Multiverse podcast and for spending time with us, HB and LB. Special shout out to our musical composer, Little HB.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, feel free to share it with others, post about it on social media, leave a rating and review, or become an exclusive Patreon member to see bonus and additional content.
To stay up to date on all things MHM, you can follow us on Instagram at Heather Bodie and at littlebit_notbroken, or subscribe to our YouTube channel to see our faces and watch some fun bloopers. You can find all of these links in the show notes.
Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.